They gave me 48 hours to give up my mini horse. I gave myself 48 hours to take their clubhouse. While their lawyer was drafting a lien against a service animal, I was 3 weeks deep into county tax records nobody had opened since 2019. 3 years. That's how long they'd been ignoring a bill on the one building they actually needed. So here's the question. What happens when the people writing the rules never bothered to read their own? Before this is over, you're going to watch me stand in a county recorder's office and buy a deed nobody was watching. You're going to watch 5 board members show up to their own meeting and find a padlock where their key used to work. And you're going to watch their attorney realize live that his clients don't own the room they're standing in anymore. I live alone 3 streets back from a community pool nobody uses. My service animal is a 32-inch mini horse I call Junebug. She's not decoration. She's trained to interrupt panic attacks before they turn into blackouts, something I've dealt with since a car accident took most of my hearing on one side and for a while most of my balance with it. I bought this house because the listing said livestock-friendly HOA optional amenities. I read that clause 4 times before I signed anything, sitting at my kitchen table with a highlighter, because I've learned the hard way that nobody else is going to protect me from fine print. I'm careful like that. It's basically my only superpower. I'm not a lawyer, I've never sued anyone, but I reconciled ledgers for an accounting firm for 11 years, and that means I know exactly what an unpaid liability looks like buried 3 tabs deep in a spreadsheet nobody double checks. The board president drives a leased Range Rover with a vanity plate that says HOA boss. His name doesn't matter, what matters is what he said the day he handed me the violation notice himself, smiling. He said, "Animals are a privilege here, not a right." I said, "She's medical equipment with a heartbeat." He said, "Take it up with our attorney. You have 48 hours. He wasn't protecting property values. He was protecting a parking spot on the clubhouse lot he'd been eyeing for his boat trailer, and my fence line was in the way. Here's the piece nobody in that room understood, including him. When an HOA lets taxes or liens on its own property sit unpaid long enough, most states allow that debt to be sold at auction, sometimes to anyone willing to pay it. Once the redemption period closes without payment, the lien holder can convert that lien into an actual deed, full ownership, legal on paper forever. Service animals are a separate matter entirely. Federal fair housing guidance protects an assistance animal from breed, weight, or species restrictions when there's documented disability need, and no bylaw, no matter how official the letterhead looks, gets to override that. So legally, he never had a case against Junebug, not for one single day. But instead of proving that on paper and waiting months for a hearing, I decided to use his own board's negligence against the one thing he actually valued. Quick question before we keep going. If your HOA came after a service animal in your home, would you fight it quietly through paperwork, or would you go looking for their weak spot the way I did? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. 2 days after the violation notice, a certified letter announced a lien against my property for unauthorized livestock. I didn't call a lawyer. I called the county clerk and requested every document tied to the HOA's corporate entity since its incorporation in 1987. That's when I found the first anomaly, a construction assessment on the clubhouse that had technically never closed. Nobody on the current board even knew it existed. One phone call confirmed a date, and what I heard changed everything. The board's attorney followed up, giving me 1 week to rehome Junebug or face formal foreclosure over the disputed fines. Real foreclosure over an animal. That same week, I drove to the tax office and asked whether any parcel owned by the HOA had an active lien sale scheduled. The clerk turned her screen toward me. Parcel 4471, the clubhouse, listed for auction in 11 days, unpaid for 3 assessment cycles. I didn't say a word out loud. I just started calculating how much I'd need. Quick recap. They were threatening to take my medical service animal over a bylaw that doesn't legally apply to her, while their own clubhouse had been sitting on unpaid taxes for over 1,000 days. Here's the mistake he made. He assumed I'd spend that week panicking and negotiating. Instead, I spent it at the county lien auction, 3 rows from investors who buy distressed parcels for a living. When parcel 4471 came up, I placed 1 bid. Nobody outbid me because nobody else in that room knew what that brick building actually was, or that the people who used it had no idea it was for sale. 30 days later, the redemption period closed with no payment from the HOA. The county finalized the transfer. I now legally owned the clubhouse where 5 board members had been drafting a foreclosure notice against my horse, inside a building that, as of that Tuesday morning, was entirely mine. I drove over before sunrise, changed the locks myself, and taped 1 sheet of paper to the glass door. Private property, no trespassing. When the board arrived for their evening meeting, 5 of them stood on the sidewalk pulling on a door that no longer opened for them. He said, "This is a mistake. You can't just buy a building." I said, "I did. Check the recorder's office. It's public record." He said, "You'll be hearing from our attorney." I said, "I'll bill you for the 20 minutes you just spent trespassing on my property. Same rate your board charges homeowners." Second question for you. If you found a loophole this big against people who'd been harassing you, would you use it all the way, or would you have stopped at just protecting the horse? I want to know honestly. It took 11 days to find the lien, 30 to close the deed, and 1 quiet morning to change a lock. Junebug still greets me at the gate every evening, completely unaware she started any of it, still leaning her head against my shoulder the same way she did the week they threatened to take her. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone sitting where I was sitting, it's this. Read the documents nobody else bothers to read. Boards count on your exhaustion, your fear, your hurry to just make the letters stop. They're rarely prepared for someone who is simply more patient than they are. So what happens when the people writing the rules never read their own? They lose the room. The board dissolved 8 months later. Junebug still has her fence. If this kind of story matters to you, subscribe. There's another one waiting next week.